everybody, it's Kenneth again. Do you live in a small apartment? Do you have no money for an own practice room? Do you have annoying neighbors who always knock on your door as soon as you start making music? I have a beautiful solution for you today if you want to record drums at home. I specifically want to show you how you can record shoegazy sounding drums. Is there anything like shoegaze drums out there? Is there a specific style? I don't think so. I think shoegaze drums can sound electronic, shoegaze drums can sound jazzy, can sound super distorted and loud. And this is exactly what I want to show you today, because this is something that I really love doing. I'm inspired by a band called Star. Star is a project by Scott Cortis. 2 years ago they released a single which is called Flesh Eating Mothers. I really dig the bass and the drum sound on this, and the guitars, actually everything is perfect. Flesh Eating Mothers is actually super extremely distorted and compressed and limited. The song is so loud, if you would load it up to SoundCloud, you would just see a black fat line without any dynamic at all. But that's exactly what I like, and I want to show you today how you can reach that. I will show you how I record my drums actually. So you can see I opened my DAW here, which is Ableton 10. I love Ableton. I use it in the studio, and finally I got my own version of it. Yeah, I love using a plugin which is called Addictive Drums. I like the sound, I like the flexibility of it. I also recommend you guys to choose Addictive Drums because it's very cheap if you know what you want. Because you can choose the components you like when it comes to drum sound. So these are my products on my account on the webpage of XLN Audio, which is the company of Addictive Drums. And you can see here I chose my packs, which are the drum kits. Like this is a Black Velvet drum kit, a metal drum kit, vintage dry drum kit. There are many drum kits, also indie pop and rock drum kits. Just click on something and listen to one of these demo examples and choose what you would like to begin with. And if you choose single components, it's not that hard to buy this plug-in. It's very good in the end, and I will show you why. Here are some MIDI packs. So these are drum rhythms, like soul and R&B rhythms. I like those rhythms, so I bought them. Sloppy grooves, real machine beats. And here are some kit pieces, like some snare drums that are sounding great, and also cajon, and also bongos. And if you decide to buy it and you install it, you have here an installation manager. I'd say it's the XLN Audio installer, where you can see what you bought, if everything is up to date, if there's something missing, if the location of your VSTs is correct. I really like it. It's so clean. They're doing a really good job. So let's start. I love playing drums, as you can see. With my MIDI keyboard, because I learned it when I was 8 years old and I didn't have any drum kits, and I just had a very small keyboard with some funny, cheap sounding drum samples on it, and that's how I learned drums. You can also choose to use your electronic drum kit and do it just like you are doing it in the practice room if you are a drummer. If you're no drummer at all, you can choose some beats from Addictive Drums, because here you can see here's a super huge bank of grooves and sounds. We can try something here, for example. Let's hear this. This sounds actually really nice for an example. You can also edit this groove in the end. You can type in your own tempo. I chose 130 BPM. I'm lucky here because this groove was played in 130 BPM, but you can also choose a slower one and it will play the same beat. Because I sync the tempi here, So if you like the beat that you chose, you can just drag it from here to a MIDI track, and so there you are. You can copy it if you want, and so you have your beat. And in the end, you can just randomly make any changes in the MIDI file. There are so many possibilities, you just have to check it out. But I try to explain everything the best way I can. So sorry if I miss anything. If you have any questions, you can always comment below this video, and I try to answer everything, and I usually do. So I choose this neutral ambience kit here. This is the view of the kit. Yeah, here is the kit view. You can see which components you have. You can always choose other components and mix them with the components of the drum kit you chose. I like this one because it sounds a little plasticish, a little more MIDI and punchy. I like it. As soon as you choose a drum kit, usually there are insert effects on it. Turn them off. There are also sands on it. Usually sands means steer the effects channel, which is usually delay and reverb. I turn everything off, make it sound as clean as possible. So if you have a kick drum, there are no effects on it at all at first. If you see the component like the kick drum here, you have kit piece controls, what means how does the kick response, how much alternatives are in the sample themselves. You can make them less alternatives or many so that it sounds naturally. You can change the pitch. I want to have the deeper sound here. You can change the tone. You can change the envelope like attack, decay, sustain. And you can also make a high or low cut. I just leave it like it is here. And you can also change where the microphone is. On the front is a little warmer, on the beta it's punchier. I love choosing some inserts here. As you can see, I already prepared it for sure. So let's start with this. I like to add some compression first. Just a tiny bit. Just look on the picture if you want to build it afterwards. And some crunch distortion. You can use Zap and Heavy and Bit Crush. It's all a bit. I also like Bit Crush. Oh, it's very nice. I love it. It's very hard to use it in a song sometimes. I used Crunch. It's just making the sound a little dirtier. And then I use the EQ here. Usually I don't like using EQs within VST plugins because I think it's much easier to use your own DAW plugins, because you have a bigger picture there, you can make much more accurate points. But I used it here to create basic sound that I want to send out in the end on an audio track and treat it like a real drum kit that I recorded. You can design your whole sound in the beginning and treat it like real drums. I love that. I also put some tape drive on it and it would sound like this. And now you see it's very juicy and I love that. So next one is the snare drum. I chose this Ludwig 20s brace snare. Here I pitched it a little bit down because I like it when it sounds a little lower, you know. I also took out a little bit of lows because it could sound a little mushy in the end. Then I put in these inserts, some EQ and compression and also distortion here. So with some compression it sounds like this. Here you can also choose the microphone position. Is it more on the top? Is it more on the bottom? Is it a mixture between that? Here you can choose the snare bass. So this is how much you will hear of the snare when you hit the kick drum, because the kick drum is always influencing the snare in a real situation as well, because the snare is vibrating and you can choose here how much you hear it. For example, this is my bass drum. Now you hear the snare drum as well. You see it? Here you see the signal of the snare. I use only a bit of it because it's sounding a little bit more natural, and this is why we use Addictive Drums, because we want to have a natural sound. It's still no real recorded drum kit that you play live, but these sounds are amazingly sampled and recorded professionally. So it's almost the same. So some EQ on it, I said, and some heavy distortion. So here I took out a little bit of the low mids and I put on a little bit more high frequencies to make it clearer for your ears, and some heavy distortion. Hi-hats. I put on some compression as well, so without it sounds like this. I chose this deep sounding hi-hat here, but I pitched it a little bit higher because I don't know, I like the sound. I think it's more the direction of the Star song. Yeah, I like it. It's warm, it's still high sounding, so it comes through in the mix. And I took off actually all the lows and all the mids, because without it would sound very good, but a little bit too much for a hi-hat. It sounds hard and metal-like, and so it's a little softer. Okay, and some EQ on it, just on the lower mids. And now it sounds like a cool, smooth hi-hat. Yeah, then we need some toms, for sure, if you want to play toms. So we have here, you can see lower toms and the high tom. I don't pitch anything here. I just choose any tom I like. You can also choose those ones who are sounding a little bit more like some congas. And I put on some compression. No EQs, no tape distortion, just the way they are. This tom section I blended out because I only use 2 toms for this example. More compression on the other low tom. Sounds nice to me. Then you have overheads. Overheads are the 2 microphones which are hanging right above your crashes and the snare and the hi-hats, the cymbals, to catch all the higher frequencies. Without everything it sounds like this. I will solo it. You can hear it. I took out a little bit more lower mids to make it smoother. Some compression on it for sure. Why we use compression? Because we want to bring out some sounds which are hidden in the background. We want to bring them to the front a little bit more. Like the snare in this case, so we have more punch. And the room mic, and this is the most important microphone because this is actually creating the whole sound that I want to create here. Yeah, just solo. As you can see, without everything, it's sounding like this. Very naturally, you can also choose another distance if you want. Then I have a little decay here because the room should be bigger. I just put on some compression and some EQ, so I took out the lows, some lower mids, and added some higher frequencies here. So the whole room sounds a little bit more full, and together it sounds like this. So this is super huge for a home recording, I think. So this is our basic sound. And now maybe you remember the effects here. Here we have the possibility to use reverb or delay or a mixture out of both. I want to let everything sound a little more shoegazy. On the room, for example, we have, let's turn the sands on. It sounds a little dry, so I want to use just a slight reverb here, 30% maybe. Short. A little reverb tail. I think it sounds a little more fluent and a little more wet, and I think it's cool. And the same thing I want to do for the overheads. They're sounding like this. And with a little reverb, it's the same effect here. If you listen closely, I will turn them up a little bit. It's a little too much. I think 30% is perfect. It's a little subtle, and this is exactly what we want. Here on my snare, I put on another reverb. I set it up another one here. It's a room. This one before was a hall, so now we add a room. And this is important because I think the snare, now the snare is sounding like this. It sounds a little dry, it sounds a little cheap, it sounds a little trashy, I think. And with some room on it, it sounds huge. Before it sounded like this. It's not bad, but that sounds much better, I think, for shoegaze, especially. Just a little bit, just to make them a little more washy. So please don't mind these two tracks here, these are just for recording the audio for the video. Now we want to act like there would be a real drum kit, so we have to generate 7 audio tracks. I just do it here.
Audio track, I think these are 6 now.
The first one is our kick. Second one is our snare. Then the hi-hats. Then tom number 1. Tom number 2. And last but not least, the overheads and the room. To have a master track just for the drums, I will create a group. So I mark everything, create a group here, and I will call them drums. Now our VST plugin is lying on a MIDI track here. So this is here where Addictive Drum lies on. This wouldn't work on audio tracks, so we send them to the audio tracks. So every single track here, the kick, the snare, the hi-hat, we send them to the audio track. And we do this by clicking here on this little arrow, and we choose separate out pre-fader. So snare, separate out pre-fader for hi-hats, for tom number 1. Tom number 2 is tom number 3 here in our VST plugin. And then for the overhead as well, separate out, and also here for the room. Now he asks us, where does the audio come from? And we say, the audio comes from VST plugins. So, and here you see now, there's the kick, there's the snare, there's the hi-hat, there's the tom. And we put in the kick here. We choose here VST plugin, snare, choose VST plugin, hi-hat, VST plugin, tom number 1, VST plugin, tom number 3, because you remember. And here we go to the overheads, and here we go to the room. So now the monitor is off, So we don't want the monitor to be off, we want everything, we want to hear everything. So I turn it to in, and now I see that every track has a signal. But nothing is mixed, so it's a little bit out of balance now. So this MIDI track where our Addictive Drums plugin is usually called the dummy track. It's a track we don't listen to anymore. So I will turn it off because the whole signals are now on our audio tracks. When you want to record these drums, this record button must always be on. Alright, now the fun part, the mixing. For the kick, let's solo the kick. I like to add some EQ first to make it a little bit cleaner. At 100 Hz I have mostly a little bass issue. It's a little mushy there, so I take some of it out. These are the correct numbers. If you're interested in that, you can read all the settings here. And I also like to put on some compression. Most professional producers say always put on some EQ and some compression, just to make everything sounding a little thicker and a little cleaner, that only the best frequencies shine through. For the snare, I only choose some EQ here. I just did that because in our drum VST, in Addictive Drums, I already put on so much compression and distortion that I don't need any more now. Here I just took out some annoying frequencies. And I also focused a little bit more on the high frequencies, that it's a little clearer. On the hi-hats, I usually take out most of the low frequencies, and also here I think this is an annoying mid frequency. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's hard to hear, but when you listen closely you will hear that it's a little thick here, and I like it to be as thin as possible. And I also take out some of the higher mids, so that we only can hear the high frequency. Without everything it sounds like this. And the floor tone gets a little more low frequencies and a little high frequency here, just for the attack. It's the high tone, sorry. I will mute the room a little bit because otherwise we can't hear it. For the floor tone, I also add some low frequencies here around 80 Hz, because this is where the low tone really shines through and where it sounds fat, and also some high frequencies for the punch. The whole drum sound will sound in the end very pumped up, so I decided not to add any compression on it here on the toms. Although you should add compression always. But a VST plugin is already an artificial thing, so I don't treat it exactly like a real drum kit, but mostly when it comes to the view of audio tracks here. The overhead, you remember the overhead, these are the two microphones. I like to take out most of the lows and add some highs to it, and also I like to add, this is a limiter here, which works more like a compressor for me. I try to show you the difference. And without. Yeah, it makes it much louder, and it's a free plugin, by the way. It's really cool. And it has these soft clip option where you can also add a little bit more drive to it. And yeah, on the room, let's solo it. I take out some lows and most of the mids. So it sounds a little bit more. I also add a new room, a drum room. This is just some reverb with a very small size of 2, a decay of 620 milliseconds and 72% here. It would sound like this. Because this is a little bit too direct for me. Now it sounds a little more far away, so the room sounds a little bigger. And some compression as well, with some very high ratio here, and yeah, a short attack, a short release, and very much threshold, you can see. I do that because now the room, all the elements that are in the room come together and it sounds very, very huge. So nice, I love it. Alright, all together sounds like this. So this is how I mix my audio tracks. If I want to make everything a little bit wider and so yeah, that you have a better stereo image, you can also add here in Ableton some sand effects. So I already did that. Here are my sand effects, they were hidden and they are turned off now. So I want to make everything a little bit wider, so I turn on my stereo. A sand effect is nothing else than a bus. You can just add any effect that you like. I added here a white mouth, which is a stereo tool. I put on 100% width on it. You can choose, should the delay channel be focused more on the left or more on the right side. And the mix is always 100%. On every sand effect, you should always choose 100% because you can blend it in here on the B section, for example, because B is my stereo channel. And I put this on my snare drum, I put this on my kick drum, I put this on the hi-hat, on the overheads for the most, because overheads are very wide and it should sound like that in the mix. And also on the room. When I do that, it sounds like this. Maybe you can hear the difference. If I want to hear some specific parts a little bit clearer, I have a clear sand here where I only focus on the high frequencies. This is very cool for snares, so a snare can come through a little bit better to it. This is why I put it here on the C channel, you see, clear. I put it on fully. You hear the difference maybe now, it's much clearer. So everything that should sound clear should get a clear sand, I guess. I love also a lot of space in the background. You hear that? This is a very long reverb with a very long decay. I also put on some EQ here to focus on most of the mids and highs. The reverb has 11, nearly 12 seconds of decay time. And the room is about 22 here, so it's 21.98. I put on 80% of this effect. I wanted to hear some of the drum kit a little bit more also in the sand effect. But as I told you, always 100%. I put this on the toms to make them sounding a little bit bigger, and also on the snare. And also on the full drum kit. You hear it, it's flying a little bit more, and this is what sounds so shoegazy in the end for me personally. I also chose to create a room send where I just put on some simple reverb. The room size is 5, 900 milliseconds decay time. If I show you the single channel, just an artificial room that I create with a send in my DAW, and I put this room on everything instead of the overheads. They should sound very dry and thin. They don't need room, in my opinion. Everything else got room here, mostly for 70 to 80%. Here are only on the kick are only 50%, and it would sound like this together. Whoa, new glasses. So thanks for watching. I hope this video could help you a little bit to realize the drum sound you're looking for. It doesn't have to be necessarily this drum sound. I just wanted to show you how I produce my drums at home. Tell me what you are using, which VST plugins you recommend, and tell me what's your favorite song where you really like the drum sound of, and subscribe to my channel if you like the content. And if you're looking for some new music, you can also go to Spotify and check out my playlist Supersonic Sugar Shock, where you find new shoegaze, dream pop, electronica artists weekly. My single Spring is coming out this March 21. Pre-save it, check out Uncanny Valleys. It was really fun to make this video, even if I needed 3 days just for recording it. But anyways, I hope to see you again, and see you next time.